town. Okay, well, ordinarily at this point, I would welcome everyone to this June 13th meeting of the Budget, Capital, and Personnel Committee, but we are lacking a quorum. So I think we're all going to just have to be patient until the rest of our membership appears. Sorry. I know that Mr. Shurtleff won't be with us, but
What about Greg and?
But yes, but I've heard nothing from Mr. Mezey or Mr. John.
Any other legislators hanging around either?
Not unless they're invisible. Yeah, that's kind of strange. Everybody else and their dog is here, but. Hi, Deb. How are you?
Thank you very much. Hello. Rich is coming in right now on Zoom.
Oh, that's great. Okay, as soon
Rich
as
is
we
coming
get
in
him,
on Zoom right now, Kathy.
as soon as we get him on board, we can start the meeting.
Rich, can you hear us? There he is.
There he is. All right. Now that we have a quorum, I think we will move forward and call this meeting to order. The first thing we need to do is get approval of the minutes of our special BCP meeting on May 3rd and our regularly scheduled May 9th meeting. Rich, are you moving? Okay, and Greg is seconding, and now we have 4, and that's great. So does anybody have any comments to make about the minutes? Okay, in that case, we will take it to a vote. Rich John,
Yes.
Greg Mezey,
Yes.
Mike Lane,
Yes.
and I'm a yes. So both sets of minutes pass unanimously. Changes to the agenda. I am advised by our clerks that Resolution C, authorizing the creation of the Community Recovery Fund, ID 10971, is redundant. And so staff has removed that from our agenda.
Let's see.
That's C. Apparently, what needed to be done regarding the creation of the Community Recovery Fund is covered in Resolution D. And I believe that at some point last year, we also allocated funds to such a fund. So we don't need to pass Resolution C. So that said, do we have any comments from the public, Brittany?
We have Bob Lynch.
All right. Mr. Lynch is a regular contributor to our county meetings, so I don't need to go over the 3-minute time limit and all the rules. Thank you.
No,
Bob.
I know that,
By
Chairperson
heart.
Dawson.
Yes.
Robert Lynch, Town of Enfield councilperson, and I'm here more or less to listen and learn and to try to answer some questions that we have had in the town of Enfield as we try to allocate a much more modest amount of ARPA funds, about $348,000. And on your agenda today is a resolution that would take and basically undo what you'd done last year to a certain extent. And instead of taking money from the fund balance to fund the Community Recovery Fund, use the ARPA money instead, which I have no problem with. It's probably the right thing to do, and I'll be interested to know why you've made the change. But the question I have in my mind, and I don't know where this came, but in Enfield, we have a citizen advisory committee that's made up of a couple of town board members and several citizens that's will eventually go through the various applications for ARPA money.
Right.
And because of that, it was raised by a member of our town board who is an attorney, who raised a caution light a couple meetings ago and said, we have to be careful because I don't think, she's saying, I don't think that we can allocate ARPA money to benefit 501c3 corporations like the fire department, fire company that is in our case, and the Enfield Food Pantry and the Enfield Community Council. I don't know where that analysis came from. And I'm curious to know if your legal counsel has made a different determination that then I can take back to Enfield, which would, to a certain extent, give us a lot more latitude in determining how the ARPA money is being apportioned. And that's the reason I'm here today.
Okay, well, I'm not sure that we're prepared to answer that question definitively. My recollection of the rules that came out of Treasury, ARPA, didn't include any limitations on 501c3s. And
I don't know if the rules affecting the counties are different from the towns. I don't know, but that was a question that I had said, this doesn't sound like what the county's doing.
Well, I don't believe the rules are different for the towns and the counties. And I would suggest simply that you ask whoever serves as counsel to your town, but I don't think that's right.
Okay.
I think it would be easy enough, quite honestly, if you just check the final rule on Treasury's website.
Again, I wasn't the attorney in the room that night, so I was not going to say, well, that's wrong. But supposedly, the person at issue had contacted counsel from the Association of Towns and apparently had gotten some guidance. And that's my question. And so I guess we have to do a little more homework out in Enfield to try to figure this out, but I'll let you get on with your meeting today.
Okay, thanks,
Thank you.
Bob.
Deborah,
Yes, Rich.
I don't want to be the attorney in the room either, but I think that fire departments are not 501c3s. Even if there was some limitation on the 501c3s, I think they're a different category of not-for-profit benefit corporation. But anyway, just one more thing to look at there. I don't recall there being any restriction in the ARPA limitations either. Thanks.
Thank you, Legislator John. Thank you.
All right, then. Well, that throws an interesting possibility in our way, but moving on. We have the county administrator's report, and here to make that is the county administrator.
Thank you, Deborah. I don't have much of a report. I have a couple of the resolutions on the agenda that we'll have more discussion around. I will say over the last couple of weeks, I've met with our departments who have capital budgets, preparing their capital budgets and trying to get the capital plan underway prior to our operating budget. And it's no surprise, but I just wanted to make people aware that we are seeing the effects of the inflation, supply chain issues and delays affecting the costs of projects that are currently underway and those planned for 2023. So we will be making adjustments accordingly, and any projects that are currently underway where we are seeing increase in costs will be coming to the F&I committee in the coming months. So just wanting to make you aware that this is happening, and we'll be making adjustments accordingly and bringing you up to speed on the details of those projects.
Thank you, Lisa. Does anybody have questions for Lisa? All right, well, that's something to really look forward to. Thank you, Lisa. Rick Snyder, Director of Finance.
Good afternoon, everybody.
Hi, Rick.
I have just one short thing to share with you today, and that was our final contingency fund report for 2021. So I'm going to share my screen. If you can't see it, I'm not sure what you have available to you there in the chambers, but I'll share the screen and I'll announce the most important numbers on this. You should be seeing a report that starts with $1.9 million at the top of the screen. That was our original funding. This whole long list that follows is all the resolutions that was passed by the legislators during the year. The only ones that you might not have seen before now are about the last 7 or so from around here down. Those were ones that came in late. Some of them are marked 2022 resolutions because they weren't actually acted upon until 2022, but they still hit the contingent fund for 2021. In fact, one of your resolutions today is still a 2021 contingent fund resolution. That will be the last one for 2021. And then some of the others that are marked no identification number or budget adjustment at the bottom are ones that I had to make in order to make the books whole in these departments. Like the last 4 on the list were Board of Election. They needed $40,000 for salaries and fringes. District Attorney Fund needed money for salaries and fringes. Facilities and Utilities Division, they needed money for taxes, electric, insurance, heat and water. That was a big one, $259,000. And probation needed to cover longevity pay and fringes. One of the reasons why these departments needed money for salary and fringes was not so much because of an oversight on their part or having additional people. A lot of it was some misinformation that was sent out during the beginning of the year, in that when they were told in certain extensions when fringes were going to be adjusted for them and that they didn't have to worry about it, that was not true. We made the departments come up with the fringes that went over in their department, and some of them really just didn't know that, because in the beginning, when we first set out the budget for 2021, some of the information that went out that said they weren't going to be responsible for making their fringe accounts whole. But it was not too bad. We added another $1.6 million in appropriation here at the bottom that the legislator passed because I forewarned of going over the original amount. So when you add the two amounts of funding together at the top, the 1.9 million plus the 1.6 million, we actually had $3.5 million available for contingent funding, of which we used roughly $3 million. And it left the balance remaining of $467,000. That's good news. We didn't use all of what we thought we might need. So we had nearly $500,000 left in contingent fund as we wrapped up the fiscal books for 2021. So that's it on the contingent fund, and there should be no more activity in 2021. Do I have any questions from you?
I
Yes.
see Rich John's hand.
Yeah, certainly 2021 was an extraordinary year. I'm glad we've closed the book on. How are we running on contingent fund for 2022, Rick?
I really don't have that schedule up to date. We're really behind in posting 2022 budget adjustments at this point. I should have it perhaps by the next legislative meeting or the following one.
Okay, do you have any sense whether 2021 was the anomaly we think it is? Or if there's any trend continuing?
As far as being high?
Yes.
Excessive? No, even when you look at 2022 in its entirety, I don't think it's really that high of an amount to be spending or putting into your contingent fund. As you see next year's budget coming to you, you'll probably see a higher contingent fund allocation that we've put in there in the past, mainly because of the doing away with rollover. And so I think we'll get a better picture on whether 2022 is going to need supplemental funding or not over the summer months, once we get all these budget adjustments passed. We're still struggling with closing 21. The audit is still ongoing with 2021. We still have not submitted our AUD or our state report for 2021. We're late on that. So we're trying to catch up on some of the audit information that's still needed before we can present you with financial statements. It's pretty aggressive at this point to say that we're going to be giving you the financial statements at that second meeting in July. I realize you don't have a first meeting in July, but we were aiming towards the second week in July. That at this point looks like that's going to be hard for us to meet that schedule because we're so far behind, but we will attempt to meet that schedule, and hopefully we can still bring you the financials at that point in time. Same thing is true for fund balance. I had hoped to have some at least rough numbers on fund balance that I could share with you, at least for the general fund. I don't have that information. I don't feel comfortable with the information I have at this time, but perhaps in the next couple of weeks, I will have that general fund balance information for you.
So are we aiming for August now?
Probably, yes.
Okay. Well, thank you, Rick. I know that you and your staff do your best to get these things to us as quickly as possible. And as Rick noted, or Rich noted optimistically, perhaps last year was extraordinary. Perhaps not. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I don't know if it's good to live in extraordinary times.
I don't think it is.
No.
But at least we never get bored, right?
No, it was not boring.
So just to clarify for anyone who happens to be watching, this $466,000, now that goes back into our fund balance?
Correct.
Okay.
Yes.
All right, thank you.
You're
Anybody
welcome.
else? Any questions for Rick? All right, seeing none. I don't have anything to report really. I think we're all just kind of holding our breath to see what our budget's gonna look like come fall. I don't know that there's anything from workforce diversity and inclusion. Henry Grandison reported that he was going to be unable to attend. I see Annie is on. I don't mean to put you on the spot, Annie, but if there's anything specific that you might want to report from WDIC, speak now or forever hold your peace.
Thanks, Deborah. I'm not prepared to give a report, but I would just remind folks that there's various events this week for our celebration of Juneteenth. And so please take a look at your emails for those events.
Thanks, Annie. All right, and Juneteenth is next Monday, right? So that is our first Juneteenth holiday here in Tompkins County. And I'm pleased to report that this morning I was in Soil and Water Conservation District Board of Directors meeting, and we added Juneteenth to the list of paid holidays for our soil and water district employees. So moving on, is anybody here from HR?
Out on medical?
Yeah, I knew that. I just
No,
wanted to.
I don't see anyone.
Okay, so we'll assume that the news from HR is good. And we will move on to the main item on our agenda today, which is the Tompkins Cortland Community College budget. And we are privileged to have the college president, Dr. Amy Kremenek, and Bill Talbot, their financier extraordinaire, here in person. So I'll let you two take it away.
I'll just say a few words. So I would like to thank the Finance Committee for hearing us today for the 22-23 operating budget. In full disclosure, I am on day 11 in my job. And I have met with Bill several times. We've gone through the budget. I'm comfortable with where we are as well as the work that we have done. But we're looking forward to sharing all of this information with you. I would also like to recognize the members of the executive team at the college for the work that they've done to get us to this point, including Bill and his team, and Deb Molinoff, who's on the screen as well, thanking them for all of their good work. We are committed. We are appreciative of the great partnership that we have with Tompkins County and the legislature. So thank you very much for the opportunity to present. I'll turn it over to Bill.
Okay, thanks very much. I'd just like to start to say that in the last few years, we've spent a lot more time being transparent and trying to provide information that's relevant to the legislature, to the counties, and get you more and more involved in our decision-making and our processes. And this year, especially in the last 12 months, you've helped and volunteered. We've had numerous legislators come to the college, sit through multiple meetings, whether it be workforce development or capital improvements, and that extends out into the budgeting process also. So this time around, this is a proposal, as in that we're looking for any insight or recommendations that you have. We'll finalize it Tuesday night after we also meet with Cortland, and then it will be presented to the full legislature to be accepted. So what you've received is a two-page document that's two-page white paper that summarizes the budget for next year. I'll just run through a couple highlights and then open it up to questions. So for 2022 or 21-22, student enrollments were our greatest challenge, especially with COVID, as students were unsure if they could actually come to school or whether or not they were required to be vaccinated. And that, in fact, did create some challenges for us. Total FTE enrollments declined 3.9%. However, core declined 10.7%. So core is defined by the total number of students less the students that are in high school that take our college level courses. Tuition revenues declined $1 million. A good indication as to how strong the college is by looking at its fund balance. In 21-22, undesignated fund beginning balance was $1.2 million. We believe that this year we'll be contributing $1 million to that fund balance. So we'll have an ending balance this year of $2.2 million. Also this year, or I should say last year, we pulled down $2 million from HERF. We put it into a designated fund balance fund for future years, knowing that we would need it to cover us as we were building our core students back up. And so we're contributing another $0.3 million to that. So we'll start the year this year with $2 million. We'll end up with $2.3 million.
Bill, can I interrupt you for a minute? Because when I was reading the document that you sent, I had to look up what HERF was. And just in case everybody else doesn't know what HERF is, you might want to explain.
Sure.
that.
HERF is the name of the organization that distributed the ARP federal funds, SRSA, and CARES. Yes. So those three different funds, which totaled to the college $7.8 million, were provided to the institution to use as they saw fit. At the beginning, it was very restrictive. It was only, it could be used for COVID-related type activities and to reimburse. And then later, there was a little bit more flexibility that we could use it for covering lost revenues. And so as we were able to cover some of those lost revenues, we decided to put those those drawdowns aside for future years to help the college get through and build those enrollments back up. Revenues itself. So our core revenues, we're looking at a 3% growth this next year, 4.2% growth in the fall, 2.2% in the spring. New fall enrollments we're predicting will go up 17%. Right now it's at 23%. So it is heading in the right direction. And that's not just because we think the economy will come back or students will come back, but the college over the last 18 months has invested heavily in student software, tracking software, changed its workflows, added new staffing structures, advertised and continue to aggressively advertise, especially with digital medias. We're introducing 7 new micro credentials. That's in line with the workforce development project that you were so graciously helping to fund. And of course, the whole workforce development initiative with additional staff, better coordination with the 2 counties. We're experiencing a 2% increase in tuition and a 3% growth in our enrollments, which will add $400,000 of new revenue for next year. County chargebacks, we expect that to go up a couple $100,000. While the number of chargebacks will go up significantly, the amount per chargeback will be going down. And that's partly because of the calculation that's used based on the amounts coming from the state, amounts coming from HERF, the amount coming from all these different calculations that comes up. So we're looking at a lower amount coming from county chargebacks. But net, it should go up a couple $100,000. And then New York State, we're of course very disappointed. They did not accept what we all thought would be the Senate's package, which would be to revert back to 2018-19 funding. And instead they held it the same as last year, which is about $700,000 less than what we expected. On the expense side, wages, that's the greatest challenge. 48% of our total expenses are in the wage category. We believe that we will end up with a 3% increase across the board for this year in wages, the cost of wages, and there's about another $400,000 increase in new wages. Most of those new wages are positions that were vacant this last year, the president being one of them. Comptroller was another one, director of advertising and marketing, director of enrollment management. So we are finally starting to get those positions filled, which is what you really need in order to take this down the path and grow the enrollments like we need to. We also have certain positions that we hired specifically to support students and to ensure that they would be able to continue. So mental health, advisors, they were paid for by HERF dollars, but HERF expires at the end of May of next year. And therefore, for the last 3 months of next year, those salaries will be borne by the college itself. And so that's the reason for the other $400,000 increase. Fringes represents 25%. And is increasing by an estimated 3.3%. Healthcare right now, we're estimating a 5% increase. That's what we've actually experienced in the last 2 years. It's a big part of the total cost, both in active and retirees, and our experience level is not changed. So great job for the county and the work that they do for our healthcare. And then lastly, contractuals are increasing by about 4.4%. And some of those were put in place because we felt as though it would help enrollment and they were not able to be covered by HERF or there's a natural increase taking place. So our focus for the next year is to, number one, is to continue to grow enrollments. It does take time for the enrollments to grow and have an impact on the revenues. The fact that we're seeing a 17% increase for new students doesn't translate into a large increase on the whole base, since it only represents about 20 to 30% of a student base. So it takes a few years to get that increase and to see it flow through the whole enrollment cycle, to see them work into continuing and of course graduate. The second is to continue to do what we've been doing for the last 2 years during COVID, is to be creative with our staffing and making sure we continue to be proactive to move the bodies that have the capabilities to the areas that will have the greatest impact on the college. As people naturally leave, is to rethink that organization and whether we really need that particular position or whether a new position somewhere else or within that group or through work rule changes can result in a better use of the limited resources that we have. And then lastly is to look for new revenue sources. And so we feel as though that there are plenty of grants out there. We're working probably most closely with our 2 counties as it relates for our capital and those types of things to see if there's ways to access new funds. But the world keeps changing, and the government keeps changing, and ideas keep changing about whether there's new monies out there for schools and safety and those types of things. So we'll continue to work hard to access those funds. So with that, I'll take questions.
Okay, does anybody have questions? I sent you all this document yesterday, I believe. So you should have it, but I understand that Mr. Lane is having problems with his outlook. So I will say for your benefit, Mike, that Bill has pretty much summarized everything that's in that report. But I see you have a hand up, so go ahead.
Wondering, Bill, what's the change in Cortland versus Tompkins County share of the county sponsorship this year?
There's actually no change this year.
Okay.
Last year it changed 1%. Tompkins lost 1%. Cortland picked up 1%. It stayed at the same percent. It's a 3-year average, by the way. So it does take time
Rolling
for it to
average, we did
change.
that a few years ago. Yeah.
Okay, Rich, I see your hand.
Thank you, Deborah. Yes, I did get a chance to look at the white paper, and thank you for the work in putting that together. It was really helpful in understanding what you were trying to do. I did want to give a shout out to the thinking that's behind it. It does seem that TC3 is doing a major reevaluation of how it can be most relevant to the community. And Ms. President, at your visit to the legislative chambers, I was saying that the workforce development efforts are really appreciated. One thing that really jumped out at me in the white paper was related to the county share, that I believe we're at 17.4%. And this is well below the average across the state for county contributions to community colleges. And of course, we're in a different situation in that we are partners with Cortland, which makes it different to adjust that. But I did some rough math. And from Tompkins County's perspective, if we wanted to meet the state average, we would be looking to put in an extra $1.4 million. Maybe my math is wrong there, but it's some number around there. And as a legislature, I really think we should be thinking about how we could provide more support at this critical time to TC3. How we do that, I know we've made special contributions for specific items like software or some physical improvements to the building. But I would like to see us thinking creatively how we get TC3 through the next short period, because I do believe enrollment will go up. There's going to be such tremendous need for what the community college is providing as we hopefully come out of COVID. But even if we remain in COVID, it just seems so essential. I'll stop talking there, but I'd love to hear any thoughts from other legislators or from the school on, is there something more we could be doing? Thank you.
Thanks, Rich. I would say, for the benefit of anyone who's watching and is unfamiliar with how our contributions are determined, that we are somewhat constrained because we share this with Cortland County, and we can't, apparently in most cases, give TC3 more than our fair share under that formula that determines, it's basically how many students come from Tompkins County and how many students come from Cortland. I don't know in terms of creative ideas, but it would seem to me that TC3 might be able to apply for some of our community recovery funds if they were so inclined. We haven't yet really sketched in any kind of detailed formula for how much money is going to go to what particular kinds of applicants, but that's something that y'all should bear in mind.
That's very, very, very helpful. I think what we have done, and I think we've done it well, is we have shared when we're running into some challenges. We have worked together to come up with some ideas. And because we do have very different counties, we have been able to work through some of those issues, and we have been able to get the funding. And when they're tied to specific projects, I think it makes it a little bit easier for the sale of that to the constituency, because they're seeing something specific for it. And one of the other, so as time goes on, and if the inflation continues at this rate, there will be some natural challenges that we won't be able to overcome. But at the same time, I think as we continue to work through what we're trying to focus on and how to get those funds there, it makes it much easier to have those creative conversations. So we appreciate your involvement on a more regular basis with us.
And I think all of us at the county appreciate the way you've been so proactive, Bill. This last year or so has been a very different process. We don't get any unpleasant last minute surprises. And I also appreciate the work that you and Deb and Arinthia had done on that pilot program for workforce development, because that's something that's really sorely needed. So.
And I'd just like to give more credit though to, it's, I can bring an issue up to the college, but it really is the whole cabinet that sits around. It's the provost, it's the IT, it's HR, it's all those that we've been working very closely together to find ways to adjust to the changes that are taking place over the last 3 years. So they all contribute on a regular basis. It really is a group effort. So.
But you're the guy that asks us for the money. Okay. Mike, did you have your hand up again?
Yeah. As you've noted, Deb, it takes two to tango with the two counties, and their financial situation is often completely different than ours because they're a smaller county. They did help. I think 2 years ago, we all agreed to, what was it, a 3% increase or something? I can't remember, in our contribution. But before that, it was like pulling teeth to try to get a change. The important thing is that we keep them aware, and I think you folks have been doing a really good job laying this out. You talk about transparency. I think you've been doing a great job with that. Hopefully there's a different group of folks, particularly in Cortland, that are more open-minded to things than they used to be. There was a time 4 or 5 years ago when Carl Haynes was still president, that they were giving him quite a difficult time about his budget proposals. So I think that's a good thing to be working with them. I had one question. I think we're all very proud of your concurrent enrollment with the high school group. How can we help you get more young people involved in that? I'm thinking particularly of Ithaca that doesn't, Cortland has a wonderful concurrent enrollment program. A lot of kids graduate from TC3 before they graduate from Cortland, but Ithaca has always seemed to be behind, and I don't know whether they're concerned that you would be directing their what they have to teach more than they want to, or whether it's a matter of they don't think that a lot of their students are going to be heading for TC3. They're heading for the 4 years or whatever. I don't know, but if there's some way we can help with the good news about concurrent enrollment, I'd be glad to know that and to try to help.
So we can take a look at that specifically with Ithaca. I will tell you that for fall, Tompkins had 600 students, unique students that participated, and in spring, 1,200 students that participated.
That's wonderful.
In this, yes.
And I'll just add to that, one of the things that I plan to do in the short term is to have conversations with the school district superintendents, including that of Ithaca, to discuss all kinds of opportunities for students, whether it's concurrent enrollment, early college, matriculating into the institution. I think there's a number of ways that the community college can work closely with all of its school district partners. There's certainly many programs that we offer now, concurrent enrollment being one of them. There's also across the country a lot of very innovative models that we can look at depending on the needs of the district. So there may be some interests that perhaps we know about, perhaps we don't, but I think that conversation will be happening in the near term. And certainly I think as you look at TC3 across the state, the concurrent enrollment program that we offer, it's fully accredited. It really is one of the models that we'll intend to build on, and then also look at some other innovative models that can be helpful depending on the needs of the district.
I think I heard the figure one time. Is it 11 school districts you work with, or is it more than that? Maybe Deb.
I think it's more than that.
Oh, no, I think it's
So
Yeah.
closer to like 30 or 35 or something. Yeah, I can work on getting that number for you. Give me a minute.
I don't need an exact number. I just think it's great to be working with all these school
Yes.
districts.
We are the largest distributor in New York State of concurrent out of the 30 SUNY community colleges.
I think there's a misunderstanding in certain communities, especially those like ours where PhDs are heavy on the ground, that there's only one good path to, academic success, and that's through a four-year college. And let me digress and say my stepson was not a good student in high school, and just a very stubborn young man at the time who just decided that he was not going to succeed. And he managed, despite his intelligence, to not graduate, and worked a bunch of really crappy jobs for about 10 years, and then realized that this was not a good way to live your life. It was thanks to a community college in Texas that he went back to school. He discovered he really loved chemistry. He got a full scholarship to finish his four-year degree at the University of Michigan, Ann Arbor, and is now at Columbia getting 2 PhDs concurrently and getting paid to do it. So, and I think that his current situation and his academic success is entirely attributable to that community college, and people don't think about that. So anyway, but I digress. So let's get to your budget resolution. So this is a resolution, Resolution A on your agenda, adoption of the 2022-2023 operating budget, Tompkins Cortland Community College, ID 10965. Can I get that moved to the floor, please? Greg moves, Mike seconds. Do we have any further discussion about this other than to note that our sponsorship contribution will be $3,027,387, and that does not represent any increase from last year. Okay, seeing no hands, are we ready to vote? Rich?
Yes.
Greg?
Yes.
Mike?
Yes.
And I'm a yes. So congratulations and thank you very much for coming. And I look
Thank you for
forward
having
to
us.
hearing how you do in Cortland. And this will be the subject of a public hearing next Tuesday, and we will vote at that time.
Be here.
Okay,
Thanks.
great.
Thank
Thank you. Okay.
Thanks for being here.
Moving on, we have resolution. This one says A as well. Oh, that's interesting. Okay. Resolution appropriation from contingent fund balance, personal services, and fringes for 2021, and authorization to accept grant, Department of Emergency Response, ID 10894. Can I get a motion on that, please? Mike moves, Greg seconds. And let's see, I saw Michael Stitley here somewhere. Yeah, there he is. Mike, do you want to tell us about this?
Good afternoon, everybody. So really, this was just to help cover some overages with overtime this year, in part because of COVID also, but just because of some personnel shortages.
So I was just curious, does all overtime just automatically get kicked into fringes? Is that how this works? Because the fringe amount is like huge.
No, the fringe does not include overtime. Overtime numbers start with 512. So anytime you see an account number that starts with a salary account 512-00551, for example, that's an overtime account. Fringes, though, is just for benefits.
Well, that's what I thought, but I'm just trying to understand why the fringe amount in this resolution, $127,500, is so disproportionately huge compared to the overtime and other numbers. Can somebody explain that to me?
There could be a couple of factors. I know, as I addressed in my earlier remarks on the contingent fund, that a lot of the departments were told that their fringe accounts were going to be taken care of for them during the year. That was a whole generation ago of different budgeteers, and that never took place. The fringe accounts were not added to during the year as promised. So the departments had to cough up the money. In this case, they couldn't come up with quite that much. But there are a number of reasons that would make fringes go up: not budgeting enough, excessive overtime, a couple of new positions here or there. So it is a fairly large increase for their fringes, but that's why we had to go to the contingent fund, was because it simply wasn't available within their departmental budget.
So this fringe number encompasses a vastly larger
Array of other things.
Yeah, okay, great.
There could have been other salary adjustments and other positions, et cetera. We only put in the amount that was absolutely necessary.
Okay, thank you. I just couldn't understand. I was trying to make those two numbers relate to each other and it wasn't happening. Okay, anybody else have questions? Mike?
Rick, I don't remember, was this figure added into your list of the contingent payments or not?
Yes.
Okay, so that's it.
Yes, this was the one that I mentioned. There was one last one that was on your agenda for today, and this is the last big one that you'll see for 2021.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions? If not, let's please vote. Rich?
Yes.
Greg?
Yes.
Mike?
Yes.
And I'm a yes. Okay, thank you, Michael. You're all set.
Thank you so much, everybody.
You're welcome. Okay, now we have Resolution B, Appropriations from Emergency Disaster Assistance Fund and Contingent Fund for Community Surveillance Testing for Tompkins County residents related to COVID-19, ID 10964. Can I get a motion on that, please? Rich moves, Greg seconds. And I know Frank's here and Lisa's here, so between the two of you, I bet you can set us straight.
And Amy's here as well. I can get us started, I guess, and these guys can provide a whole lot more detail. So we're aware that FEMA has been reimbursing us 100% for our community testing program through the end of June of this year. And then as of July 1st, they are going to start reimbursing us 90%. So this is, this resolution assumes that we will now be picking up 10% of that cost locally for individuals who are not covered by insurance or otherwise, whose costs would not be covered. And then we are also assuming that some of the funding coming from New York State to the health department may help reimburse some of those costs. And I would leave it to Frank and Amy to fill in some more details.
I'll just say we're not 100% sure that the FEMA reimbursement rate will change. That will be decided by the federal government. They have made suggestions that it will go to that, and it is only covered through June 30th. So we're assuming that the 10% based on what we're getting there. The state funding likely will not cover, it won't be the same as the FEMA. So we won't be able to use that funding stream. That's why we would continue with those reimbursements. And some of this moves, I believe, some funding that we've already received in reimbursement into the health department so that there's actually funding there as those costs come in. And Frank, if I missed any of that, please feel free.
Nope, you guys got it. The $2.1 million is to cover expected revenues and expenses related to testing in our budget in 2022. And then there's the additional 200,000 to cover the 10%. So we've capped it at 200,000, which we think will get us through the rest of the year. If it's ends up being more than that, obviously we'd have to come back to the legislature for your consideration. But we think that will carry us through the end of the year.
So I'm trying to understand. So this emergency disaster assistance, where's that money coming from? Is that from FEMA?
FEMA.
Anticipated to be from FEMA?
That's
Correct.
FEMA dollars. Yep.
Okay. And you're estimating that the cost of continuing this program specifically for uninsured, asymptomatic people seeking testing is going to be $2.3 million. That's what we're going to pay Cayuga Med, right?
No, the 2.3 million is the total cost of testing. So that would be for anyone that gets tested at the mall site that does not have insurance and it's medically necessary, meaning they're symptomatic or a close contact. You can have insurance and get tested at the mall and it can't be billed. So if somebody's traveling, for example, and they want to get tested before or after travel, if they're a Tompkins County resident, that is currently covered by us through FEMA, but it is not billable to insurance. And so those are the individuals that after July 1st, we believe we're going to have to cover 10% of those costs. So the 2.3 million is the total for the year that we're expecting, 2.1 million in revenue from FEMA, and with a $200,000 amount from the contingent fund for covering that 10%.
So I guess my question is, how many people fall into that category of us having to pay for their tests? And why can't they use the home testing kits that we're giving out free?
So they could, but they're not. So some folks are using testing at the mall. Part of our approach here, things are slowing down for the summer, as I think everybody's aware. Our concern is we don't know what's going to happen in the fall. And so what we're trying to do is make sure that we have the infrastructure in place in the fall to do the testing. And so part of that for the hospital is knowing kind of what they can expect from a reimbursement perspective, because we could be in a position where it's not financially feasible for the mall to remain open over the summer. And then we're in a position of whether or not it can come back in the fall, based on, where the hospital is, staffing wise, standing up a whole new testing site again. So really what we're trying to do here is just make sure that we can carry ourselves through next fall to see what it looks like with the mall testing sites still being in place. much of that money, the 10% would come in the fall, right? If testing numbers went up. We've seen a steady decline in testing at the mall over the last couple of months, and we expect that to continue over the summer. So it's really about a sustainability effort to keep the capacity in place in anticipation of an uptick in cases in the fall.
And currently, we're seeing between 300 and 400 people at that site a week that we're seeking reimbursement on. And there are some reasons why people choose the mall site versus the at-home test site, just because of where they need that, as well as ensuring the validity of the test. So they may have already taken the at-home test and then go to the mall site as well because they need documentation or whatever.
So I'm a little more confused than I was before. If the whole point of this is to keep that mall site open, we don't pay Cayuga Med unless they test somebody, right?
Correct.
Correct. And we're paying for 400 people a week.
Right. Are we paying them a minimum as if? So if people don't use it over the summer, they don't get paid. So how does this keep the mall site open?
Well, part of it is that if we were not sponsoring county residents to be tested there, they would not go. And so that we know there would be an immediate decrease in the amount of folks going. The decrease we're seeing now is related to disease numbers going down. If the number goes to virtually zero, it just puts us in a position where the mall isn't sustainable over the summer months. And it may be that we don't need the mall in the fall, and it may get stood down sooner. So it's really just a piece of the puzzle, trying to make sure we have the capacity available.
Well, that's kind of my next question. How long do we plan on doing this?
Yeah, so the funding that we're asking for is through the end of the year. We believe the amount that we're asking for will carry us through the end of the year, in hopes that we can stand it down sooner. But it's easier to stand it down than it is to stand it back up. And so knowing that we're likely going to see cases come up again in the fall, we wanted to see where that got to. My hope would be that by the end of the year, we might be in a position where, COVID is in a different phase with everyone, and we can stand them all down and push things back out to the healthcare system.
Okay, thank you. I see Rich's hand.
Yeah, I was curious. It seems like a good bit of the testing was connected with airline travel. And that wasn't there just an announcement saying there wasn't going to have to be testing for that?
You don't have to test to get back into the United States.
Yeah, I think that's
foreign travel. Yeah, foreign travel coming into the United States.
The testing for travel is not just mandatory testing. There's a lot of folks in our community that are proactively testing when they travel. They may have someone that's, a vulnerable person that lives in their household, or vulnerable family members that they, visit frequently, and they just want to know, after their travel, whether, how safe it is to be around those folks. So yeah, we're kind of in this transition phase, right? It's a good place to be, because I'm hoping we're talking about the end of needing to have standalone testing. Just with the unknown of the fall coming, we're trying to hold things together until we can, see what happens there, and then ultimately make, final decisions with the hospital about the mall site.
This seems to make sense to me, that we just be prepared for what might happen this fall. Yeah. Okay. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Does anybody else have any questions? If not, let's vote. Rich?
Yes.
Greg?
Yes.
Mike?
Yes.
And I'm a yes. So I guess you're on. At least
Thank you.
until the end of the year.
So my understanding is with this, we're going to stand by and stand down. Is that right?
Well, that sounds.
That's the plan.
That sounds like wording we should be avoiding, Mike, but okay. All right, moving on. So now we have Resolution D, authorizing ARPA funds to be used for the Community Recovery Program, ID 10968. Can I get a motion on that, please? Greg moves it, Rich seconds it, and I will just give a preview on this for our avid watching public and for the benefit of Mr. Lynch. So I was one of the cheerleaders for not using ARPA for community recovery because based on the proposed Treasury rule, the reporting, monitoring, and compliance rules were draconian and would have eaten up vast amounts of either our staff time or a contractor's time, and that would come out of county funds. In the interim, a couple of things have changed. The Treasury final rule came out, and the reporting requirements are much less onerous. I think because Treasury figured out that if they really held everybody to those requirements, they would have to hire 3 times as many people, and all they would do would be read compliance reports on ARPA. The other piece of it was that at the time that we were considering which funds to use for community recovery, we had been advised that there were ways and means to use county general fund to give out to a wide variety of organizations and uses in the community. And now that we have retained our consultant to run this program, we have learned that that's not the case. So for those 2 reasons, we have reached the conclusion that probably the best thing to do is to take 6.53 million out of fund balance and move that over to meet the goals that we set for the Community Recovery Fund, and then trade out the ARPA funds and put them in the community recovery. I don't know. I got that mixed up. But anyway, we're moving ARPA funds over to community recovery because that gives us more freedom to distribute it to the community, and we don't have the onerous reporting requirements. And we're moving the fund balance that we were going to use for the Community Recovery Fund back over to be used for cash for capital. So now that I've muddled that up, does anybody else have anything they want to say about that? Mike?
I think our last meeting, when this issue was coming up, and whether we should do this, it was my understanding that we were going to request an opinion from the comptroller's office, and that was supposed to have been expedited. I was kind of concerned it might take a while. I wondered if we have done that and whether we received that opinion.
I don't think our county attorney thought that that was a really great idea.
I thought the county attorney was the one that suggested it.
I do remember him bringing it up. I don't believe that he got that opinion. He was going through various legal opinions on proper use of county funds, and the legal counsel of our consultant also reached a similar conclusion based on the New York State Constitution. There are very specific guidelines that one has to follow for the use of municipal funds. And they worried that they have to be related to a proper public purpose, and that's very narrowly defined in case law. And so it seemed quite onerous to continue using those funds because it really was on a case-by-case basis, determining what was a proper public purpose and what wasn't. We did find many instances, and I think our current practices where we contract with nonprofits for specific purposes and specific programs in our budget process is allowable. Doing that through a grant program and possibly expanding the use of these funds, it seemed like we would be treading into territory that was more difficult. And that in actuality, the purposes defined through the ARPA funds and the federal funds, ironically, gave us more flexibility than the use of our local fund balance.
Thank you for your response.
Okay, Greg?
Sorry, I was navigating my unmute button. I again will default to the recommendations of the professionals and those that know this best, and I'm assured that the recommendation comes with a lot of thoughtful consideration on how best to use this money. So fully support it. The one question I would have, if when this comes for those of us that weren't part of the legislature previously, and for just general public, can we show the breakdown of the 19,847 as sort of the total amount of ARPA funds that we have in a resolution or in an attachment to this, just so that it shows the full allocation of those funds, just so we can see the full picture rather than just snippets in time?
Well, we allocated 100% of it to government operations, and 75% of that was towards capital programs.
Okay. Got it. I just want to make sure that that's clear in reading this, or not having to search back to the resolution.
And again, the reason that we did that was because if you used it for government operations, you had no compliance and monitoring obligations, pretty much.
Yeah, totally on board with the thought process. I just want to make sure that it's, I guess, all in one place, or there's as much detail as possible. If it's necessary. If it doesn't make sense to put in this, totally understand.
I could offer an amendment that for the second whereas the county allocated 100% of those funds to government operations and plan to allocate 70% of that amount to, or approximately whatever, toward the capital program. I mean, if that would be considered friendly.
Yeah, it works for me.
Clarify it further for anybody who didn't want to go back and look for it.
Yeah, that makes sense.
I think that was 75%, wasn't it? Not 70.
The county allocated 100% of the ARPA funds to government operations, and 75% of those funds, or approximately,
14.8 million.
Right. Have you got that, Brett? I can write it out for you.
Yes.
Okay,
But it's
great.
actually the third whereas the county allocated 100% of the ARPA funds to government operations and approximately 75% of these funds toward the capital program.
That's the third whereas? I must be operating off a different. Oh, I see what I did. No, I don't see what I did. What did I do?
It should be line 6. Is that what you're seeing?
Which resolution are we looking at?
We're
looking at
at
the last one.
D, because we took C off the agenda. So it is the second whereas, Brett.
Yep, sorry.
That's okay. It's just so pathetically easy to confuse me these days.
So similarly. Yes, I've got it.
All right. So can I get is that friendly to the mover and seconder?
Could you say what it is again?
Whereas the county allocated 100% of the ARPA funds to government operations and planned to allocate 75% of these funds, and then the rest of it reads the same.
Okay, and government operations would be non-caps.
That's right. It's not the Jewel Committee. It's government operations.
Yeah. Yes, friendly.
Okay, great. All right, so we're voting on this as amended. Does anybody have any other comments or questions? If not, Rich,
Yes.
Greg,
Yes.
Mike,
Yes.
and I'm a yes. So thank you, everybody. We are now one step closer to getting that money out the door. Okay, does anybody have anything else they want to bring up?
Deborah, I just wanted to share a fact that Deb Molinoff had shared in the chat regarding TC3.
Okay.
She said that TC3 offers 117 distinct college courses approved for concurrent enrollment in 83 partner high schools.
Wow.
So it's
That's
way higher.
impressive.
Yeah.
Thanks, Brett.
You're welcome.
Okay, and with that happy fact, we are adjourned. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Rick.